What's up, grinders? Today we're going to do something meta. We're going to be looking at Metatron, actually looking at Xiaoma. Will be interesting because I'm going to be reacting to both of them at once. And I've reviewed Metatron before. I did a review of his video where he spoke about using gaming, and like I liked the idea and I'd used it before. But I've never actually done anything for Xiaoma, and I assume that just means small horse. I actually haven't seen the characters for Xiaoma. Anyway, so Xiaoma is good but really cringe. Okay, let's begin.
Hey noble ones, welcome to Metatron's Academy. So I found this video that
I don't know about you guys, but whenever a YouTuber shares their screen, the first thing I do is I go look at their tabs to see if they left something open that they shouldn't have, and then possibly over to like plugins, and then of course what they're being recommended. So looking at his recommendations, it seems here that like he's probably into like the deep dark internet goss, because he's got like Some Ordinary Gamer right up there.
I haven't watched yet, and it's from Xiaoma, New York City. So
oh yeah, I was right, Xiaoma. Yeah, so there's the characters.
Xiaoma 在纽约, it's a channel that we often react to and talk about.
That is one hell of a clickbait title.
I'm not a hater of Xiaoma. I'm not a massive fan of Xiaoma either. But the title, How I Learned to Speak Any Language in 24 Hours, monumental clickbait. And I really hope
it totally worked, because it got him and now it's got me.
That that's all it is. Like a clickbait that he puts here, so you click it, but then he tells you, no, it's impossible, because it's impossible. This is nonsense. This is nonsense. We'll see. I'll be critical, you know.
Yeah, obviously it's nonsense.
Know me, I'll tell it how it is.
Although, you will get those random Tokipona speakers who will be like, but with Tokipona, you can learn it within 24 hours. And I'll be like, bro, you're not going to be fluent though, so stop it.
Without further ado, let's begin.
I learned to speak 56 languages.
No, you didn't.
Yeah, no, you didn't.
And I learned each of them in under 24 hours.
This must
No, you didn't.
be a joke.
Yes, I know that sounds a little bit ridiculous.
It is?
Even to me, but it is true. And it's actually the only way that I could have posted 56 videos of me surprising strangers by speaking their language.
Okay. My opinion of Xiaoma before this very moment was that the guy walked around telling people that, like, he doesn't speak these languages, but he likes to, like, learn random phrases in them and just, like, catch people off guard type of thing. And I thought that was the extent of it. I hope that he's going to clarify right now that he doesn't actually, like, speak these languages. Because for the normie, when you say speak, it means you can actually speak, like, in every normal conversation.
In just the past
Come on, Xiaoma. Come on.
few years. So I've talked about this before, but I was actually terrible at learning languages in high school. Not that I got bad grades, my grades were actually pretty good, but I just couldn't actually speak any of these languages that I studied. I would just see this language.
Yeah, I was pretty crap in high school as well. With my Japanese, like, I passed the classes, although realistically, I think they just let me through. And I think that the issue was that I just didn't understand fundamentally that languages were just completely separate beasts and they were not just English with different sounds.
Textbook full of super intimidating alphabets and scripts and charts and tones, and just become totally overwhelmed. You know, and having grown up in a monolingual English-speaking environment in the United States.
I also grew up in a monolingual environment. Although my mum is German, she never taught German to me because of our crap school system telling her, don't teach him German, he will never learn English. And then she freaked out.
I would just think to myself, man, it's either geniuses or Dutch people who can actually learn to speak multiple languages.
What's the Dutch joke? I don't get the Dutch joke. This must be something that Americans and Europeans get, because I do not get that at all.
Languages. And I really wanted to learn to
I wonder why Dutch people
speak.
I had the same reaction.
But I would try by reading the textbook, which is how I thought you were supposed to learn a language, but I would inevitably get bogged down in the details and then just totally give up. But
yeah, that's a catastrophic failure in the educational system when it comes to language learning and foreign language acquisition. I'm hoping to help rectify that in a way, as I've been working on a book where I will share all of the ways in which, you know, all of the ways that I think are the most effective when it comes to learning language and reaching actual fluency.
after I moved
Yeah, see, I'm not going to be writing a book because I'm too fat and lazy to write a book, so I'm just going to keep making really low quality YouTube videos and releasing them pretty much daily or every second day, and just slowly giving you guys information over a very slow period of time because I'm just too, like, lazy to write a book. Sorry, guys.
to China and started learning Chinese, I started experimenting more and more with language learning on my YouTube channel, and especially since it became my full-time job a few years ago, I actually started getting really, really good at learning languages.
You didn't get that good, though.
To the point where now, I consider myself possibly the world's leading expert on how to learn a language as
Oh, come on.
quickly as possible.
I mean, one thing about Xiaoma, he is full of himself. Like, I know I mean, that doesn't sound good, man.
Yeah, he's full of himself based on this.
And I'm just going to say it. Maybe a little humility will help in this case.
Which, by the way,
Okay, I'm liking Metatron here.
does not make me anything close to the world's greatest polyglot. There are millions of people in this world who have way better language skills than I do, but having gone from 0 to basic conversational ability in 56 languages from every continent on the planet.
You didn't go to basic, fluent, like, conversational... Let me hear that again. Like, no, that can't be right.
From every continent on the planet except Antarctica, I do think that I at least 56 languages from every continent on the planet.
No, god damn it. Just click there.
Who have way better language skills than I do, but having gone from 0 to basic conversational ability in...
Basic conversational ability. What is basic conversational ability? Is that you just spitting out a couple of phrases and knowing what the expected results are? Or is that you actually having a conversation, just with, like, a very limited vocab? Like, I highly doubt you are very basic in 56 languages. You probably know a bunch of set phrases in 56 languages.
56 languages from every continent on the planet except Antarctica. I do think that I at least have some experience in the topic of how to learn any language quickly.
Yeah, I mean, the guy is good. You know me, I will call out the nonsense, which he has already spoken a bit, but I will also give credit when credit is due. That's what I think separates me from haters, because detractors will never do that. They will say, you're horrible, you're nothing, you're bad, your Chinese is bad. I'm like, come on. Half of what I've watched now made me cringe here. I'm being direct and honest, you know me, I tell it how it is. With that being said, this guy's Chinese is really good. And he is a talented individual. He's not the world leading, whatever. No, he's not. And he's also not the best Chinese speaker that you have on the tube. With that being said, he is good. And to say, just because he sounds a bit arrogant when he says stuff like that, when he says, I'm really good, okay. But he is good. I mean, just because the way he says or something he says makes...
I'm going to have to kind of disagree with Metatron here. So the limited Chinese I've seen from Xiaoma, he is obviously fluent, as in he can communicate and he can understand people. But what is defined as good? That's the hard part here. So he's good to communicate. He can do everything fine. So if that's what you deem as good in a language, that you can communicate and be understood and understand what's like coming at you, then yeah, he's good. However, he has a heavy American accent in Chinese.
Makes me cringe. It doesn't mean that now I need to become unfair. The guy is good at learning languages, and his Chinese is really, really good.
It's not really, really good. It's good. But there is other YouTubers that are substantially, like, multiple times better than him type of thing.
See, what I realize the problem with typical language textbooks is...
But then I guess this is all very subjective. Like, I'm not trying to say or degrade his Chinese abilities in any way. I'm just saying that if you're saying someone's really, really good, I'm thinking you're, like, top of the, like, line type of thing. Like, I don't consider myself very, very good. Like, I'm just going to say that right now. I'm nowhere very, very good.
Is that they front load too much. You have to learn all of these alphabets and weird scripts and charts and tones and grammar before you even get to chapter 1. They're these incredibly boring and by themselves useless things that you're somehow just expected to memorize out of context. And it isn't just textbooks that teach like this. This forms the basis of our language learning pedagogy in almost all language learning classrooms.
He's absolutely right.
Around the world.
He's right to a degree, but also wrong in another way. So, for example, if you actually want to learn a language, there's no getting around this stuff. You're going to have to learn it. And like with a script-based language, I guess you need to make a decision straight up. Do you want to be able to read this language or not? Like, for example, let's go, when I said script-based, that's like terrible wording. I mean, like, for a language that's got a script rather than the Latin script. So, for example, Chinese, you need to make a decision. Are you going to be someone who wants to learn the script or not? Because that's going to make a big difference on how you actually progress in this language. God damn it, I just punched my laptop. So there's no right or wrong answer here about this. It's not, yeah, you're right. You have to make that decision. Like, I know a white guy who no longer lives in Sydney, but his spoken Chinese is like flawless. He cannot read a single character because it just did not interest him and he didn't want to learn them, okay? So for him, that was right. Don't learn the script. But then I know other people who only care about reading. So this is one of those things where it's a personal decision.
World. And while I do understand the desire to create a solid foundation, I think you end up instead intimidating beginners and mystifying language learning. You make language learning feel like calculus when it's actually much easier than that. Don't get me wrong, learning languages is hard, but as Matt versus Japan likes to say, it's hard in the way that exercise is hard, not in the way that calculus is hard. It does not take...
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, that's an interesting phrase, because language is literally something you have to grind every day, and exercise is the same.
Not a huge fan of Matt versus Japan with what he has done, but this is...
For those who don't know, Matt versus Japan has been, let's say, linked to a few different scams in different ways.
How many years ago? Oh, 9 months ago. Well, then it's after all that situation with the emails and the stuff. Well, whatever.
A genius to go jogging, but it does take a certain level of commitment. And this textbook style, by the way, is...
Also, by the way, okay, Metatron's not a fan of Matt vs. Japan. I got no problems. Obviously, like, he's done some scammy stuff type of thing. But I can separate the scam from the knowledge that he's parted, okay? So, yeah, Matt vs. Japan had some really interesting points about learning language, and he presented them at a time when there was, like, not that much information about it. So, like, in that regard, he's really good. Like, he presented really good stuff. It was free. It was out there. And then also on the side, he was also a scammer in some ways. So it's like, you can separate one thing from the other.
This is also not the way that 99% of people who actually succeed at learning languages actually learn their languages. A really interesting example of this is that most Chinese teachers like to teach you Chinese characters on day one before you even learn to speak, because that's how they first learned Chinese when they went to elementary school in China. But what this overlooked...
I would disagree with that, because arguably a child who goes to elementary school who is a native speaker already speaks the language by the time they get to start writing and learning the Hanzi. So I don't think it's a good equivalent when it comes to that, because... And I know, Metatron, you're being pedantic. Yes, that's why you subscribed. I'm pedantic, man, but I'm fair. At least give me that. Arguably, children by that age already do speak the language, and then they start learning the characters. So what they do in China, in my opinion, is actually fine. It's not the same as taking someone who knows nothing of the language, a foreigner, and then start with the characters. It's a different scenario, which is why it doesn't work.
And I'm going to be even more pedantic about this. I was just waiting for my moment. Basically, a kid, by the time they get to school, they can already recognize hundreds of characters because it's part of their daily life. So those sets of characters that they learn, and in fact nowadays Chinese parents are insane. They try to get their kids learning characters way before school, but let's ignore those particular, like tiger mums and stuff. They still see these characters every day on the street, on the shops, on the signs, everywhere. So there's they come in with a large amount of characters that they've literally just learnt through observation.
Is that on their first day of elementary school in China, they already spoke fluent Mandarin.
Okay, then we agree.
Which they had learned.
Yeah, that's true.
Word by word, phrase by phrase, sentence by sentence from their parents and not from a textbook.
Correct.
So by the time they were learning the writing system, they already understood the entire essence of Mandarin speaking and grammar to which they could then apply the characters. So my system has two parts.
There's two ways to approach Chinese specifically. Okay, you can come at it from the character way, or you can come at it from the spoken language. And I am of the belief that neither way is wrong. It's up to you which path you want to take. Because if you learn characters first, you're going to be front-loaded with a ton of individual characters, which is going to make your life hell. Until you get to about 1,500, 2,000 characters. And then what's going to happen is this is going to flip on its head, because suddenly you're going to see all these characters and you can just fit them together and create so many more words, and therefore you're going to massively expand your vocab very, very quickly. So you're front-loaded, very slow, and then expand later on. However, if you start with speech, you're kind of always, at least to a degree, kind of just picking up these individual words and putting them together as you go type of thing. And you may notice some similarities between them, but if you haven't learnt the characters, there's a good chance that you're memorizing entire words that are made up of actual characters of other words you already know, but you're not aware of it. So you're going to basically be in that phase where you'll be like that for a very, very, very long time until you kind of start hearing the individual differences. So there's no good way to approach this. You just need to decide which way you want to go, what interests you the most.
Parts, and part one is speaking practice. The key to my rapid language learning is spending 1 hour per day speaking with online tutors or friends. And I do this...
Okay, well, if you're rapidly wanting to learn a language, then obviously you're not going to go the character path.
For 10 to 15 sessions spread out over 3 weeks. The focus here is purely on practical conversation skills. I start from zero, from very basic phrases, and then we gradually build up to more and more complex conversations. And I do, by the way, actually have a free list of phrases that I like to use.
Hey, let's have a quick look at this. You've got, can you speak Chinese? I want to buy this. I have eaten food. So these are your standard go to the shop and buy items type of thing. This is not conversational Chinese. This is just buy something from the shop Chinese.
For this purpose, which you can also check out at the link in the description, I like to call them my magic sentences. And I think speaking from the very beginning...
There's nothing magic about these sentences. This is guidebook sentences.
Literally day one, is crucial.
I agree with that. Speaking from the very beginning is a good idea. Of course, it's going to be very simple, elementary sentences. I agree 100% with that. You should start speaking immediately, not wait until you feel confident, because then you're never going to start.
I disagree with that statement to a degree. So first, you want to get the pronunciation down pat, or you're going to end up like Xiaoma, who has a very heavy American accent when speaking Chinese.
Because it helps to demystify the language, and it also helps to get over your fear of speaking, which is precisely the problem that I had in high school.
And again, I guess this also leads to the question of, do you care about that? Do you just care about, I want to be able to speak and be understood? Then, okay, fine. But if you want to, like, lower your chances of having a heavy accent, then it's probably better to just focus on getting your pronunciation, you know, quite stable, then move on. This is like pretty much everything in language learning. You need to make active decisions about where you want to go and then take the best path. So there is no good path that I can say, just do this, because it really depends on what you want.
High school.
This is one thing he excels at. He will go out of his way, even when he's still not fluent and in fact not competent in these languages, but he still does, and that's one thing that I think needs credit, is that he will just go and try it. And he has done it so much that now he's very confident with that. He doesn't fear the fact that maybe he might not understand what natives say back and that kind of stuff, and that's very good. It is something that he does have and probably built. I don't know if that's how he always was from a personality perspective, or if it's something that he actually developed through practice. In fact, if it's the latter, then that would make him a better teacher towards those people that are inward and in fact a little awkward and don't feel like they could do the same because they're afraid that they won't understand, or that what they say is going to be incorrect.
If you want to get good at like being, so if you're an introvert and you want to become an extrovert, now you're not going to become an extrovert, but if you want to fake it in a way, like for example, I'm at my core an introvert still to this day. I prefer to sit in my room and be left alone type of thing, but I can then go out and be like the spark of the party and get everyone talking and chatting and have a great time type of thing. But my preference is still just to sit at home and be left alone type of thing. But you can retrain yourself for situations as needed. And if you want to do that, like if you're like a really shut-in person and you really want to open yourself up, like you actually want to do this, I recommend you go do theatre training. Go join an acting school. Go join one that focuses specifically on theatre training. And trust me, by the end of that course, you will be a lot more confident and just being out in the open and like, you know, on full display type of thing.
I would spend all this time studying my textbooks, and then when it came to actually speak, I would be petrified. I wouldn't know what to say.
There we go.
Because I had never actually spoken before.
Yeah.
Everything I learned had come from the textbook. Plus, the direct interaction with native speakers helps me internalize the flow of the language very quickly. An analogy that I often use is that trying to learn to speak a language by reading a textbook is like trying to learn to ride a bike by reading a textbook.
Now, obviously, also, you have to think about the fact that he's hiring teachers and stuff to help him type of thing. Not everyone's got the money, like, obviously, to do this.
Good point.
You know, you're just studying the physics of how your feet move and the rotations at this number of RPM create this movement. So all I have to do is turn left into the torque, and like we've all been brainwashed by school into thinking that's how it works.
Yeah, I think that approach when it comes to language is only good as far as you want to become a linguist, in the sense like a grammarian or someone who, even a translator. If you want to be a professional translator, you don't necessarily need to learn how to speak the language, although then again, you will be a better translator if you have a lot of experience, because then you'll translate better because you speak it. Yeah, fluency is always preferable. But if you want to be a linguist, like someone who literally does that, so explains to you the fricative sound, this, and the interdental and the plosive, and all of that, then you don't really need to speak the language at that point. But I think a lot of the people that do begin this language journey that we all here in this channel, at least on this channel, at least began, we do it because we want to speak and actually have a successful communicative experience and event, the target language that we have chosen. And at that point, then going into the details that are pretty much the equivalent of the physics of languages can be interesting, but it should be like a side thing, like a little bit, and it's not even necessary really.
But it's not.
Well, on my channel, I know the people who come and watch me, they're not necessarily wanting to speak. Some want to speak, some want to read, some want to just watch movies type of thing. So I've got all types that come over here. So my audience probably doesn't cross over too well with his. So I would say, again, this just comes down to what you want to do with the language. Like, if you want to read, then Xiaoma's advice is completely useless to you. Like, it's not going to help you type of thing. So you just need to figure out advice that works for your actual need.
It's not. And in theory, maybe it is possible to learn how to ride a bike by reading a physics textbook. But practically speaking, you do need to understand the rhythm of bike riding and actually ride a bike in order to learn how to ride a bike. Now, part 2...
Okay, so let's focus on speaking. I'm assuming if you want to speak, you want to kind of nullify your accent as much as possible. Obviously, you're not going to perfect it, but you want to nullify it. And it's best to just focus a little bit on getting your pronunciation and sounds down pat. There is so many Chinese speakers, okay, who they're fluent, but they're very difficult to understand because they just haven't quite got those sounds down.
2 of my method is sentence mining. After each speaking session, I collect and record key
我今天感觉好多了，
words, phrases, or sentences
还有很多事要做。
from
As you guys know on this channel, I'm a big proponent of sentence mining.
the session into
That's pretty cool. 有什么事是我该做的吗？
Anki, a free flashcard program to gradually memorize what I just learned in the speaking session over the next few weeks. By the way, always front card English and back card target language to make...
Okay, I definitely don't agree with that. Okay, well, I guess this works for what he wants because he wants to pull on set phrases out of his head and just inject those phrases into conversation. For me, I want to change to actually thinking in the language as fast as possible, which is why I have audio on the front of the card, because you need to hear the other person who's talking, so you need to understand what you're hearing. And when you actually start to understand it as you hear it, you get better and better at actually production. However, if you want to focus on production, I still don't recommend English on the front because, well, that's great, could be said in so many different ways in Chinese. You don't want to just have a one-to-one translation. So instead, what you should do, if you're focusing on production here, which is speaking, you want to have like the actual sentence in the language on the front of the card and then close out certain parts. Close, C-L-O-Z-E, is actually a methodology where part of that sentence is hidden and you need to fill it in.
Make flashcards that force you to actively
那就好。
recall the words
桌子上有一个杯子。
rather than just
Like, for example, 桌子上有一个杯子. You could say 杯子在桌子上. There's like 2 different ways to say that.
passively
您结婚了吗？
recognize it. And I only put sentences whose grammar I fully understand into Anki, so I have to learn the
Yeah, that's a good idea. I always say, like, you want to study the sentences before they end up in Anki. Anki is there for your actual review. It's not there for learning.
grammar from my teacher before I can go and memorize the sentences. And so this means that I'm not just rote memorizing sentences, I'm actually memorizing grammar as well by natural osmosis. What I'm definitely not doing, which I used to do in high school all the time, is memorize big conjugation charts or memorize alphabets.
Yeah, that's a waste of time.
Memorize
Yeah, so I agree there that it's a waste of time. You just basically want to pick these things up through entire sentence structures while you've got them in your cards. And only really focus on the ones that you know you're going to need to produce on a daily basis, because hearing them, you're going to learn to hear them anyway.
tone rules or things like that. And so as I memorize these sentences, I'm also naturally memorizing the grammar of the language. As I said before, the grammar of most languages isn't too hard. Hard isn't calculus, that this is really so difficult. With the possible exception of some Native American languages, which, you know. So for each language that I study over these 15 sessions, I end up developing Anki.
Every language has got its hard thing. Some languages have got hard grammar, some languages have got hard sounds, some have got hard scripts, some are just Chinese. No, just joking. But like every language has that part which will drive you up the wall and make you like just go insane.
decks, you know, that contain anywhere from 50 to 100 cards.
And here's a funny thing. People will be like, there'll always be that one Tokipona speaker who will be in the conversation. He'll be like, nope, Tokipona doesn't have any of that. It's got easy sounds, easy grammar, limited number of words. It's perfect. And I'll be like, yeah, until you want to start speaking it fluently and have the other person understand you fluently, then it becomes insanely hard with its ambiguity, because not only are you trying to speak with a very limited number of words and then try and get your idea across, you then need to maintain a conversation around this topic and referring back to all these things that take like a sentence to describe something that's normally one word in another language. I could go on and on and on and on about this, but like that just randomly popped into my head.
And that really is
Gosh, the music is really loud. Is it me? Is it just me?
all you need.
I actually had a discussion about music in my last video. I've come to the conclusion that I just hate music in vlogs or like in these types of discussions here. I don't feel it's needed. Like, I used to add it, and I hate that I used to add it.
To know in order to have basic conversations in any language. about 50 to 100 words and phrases. And yes, you also pick up...
I personally fail. For him, it's his job. He makes money through it, so good for him. But I personally fail to understand the need to learn to have this ability to say a few sentences and a few phrases in 50 languages, but then you don't speak any of those. I mean, in this case, he speaks Mandarin, great. But like, what's the point? I personally, if you really want to be multilingual, I'm multilingual myself. I would rather choose like 4 languages, but be really fluent, like very proficient with those, rather than applying a method. But then again, for him...
I agree with what he's saying so far, with one caveat. So this, again, comes down to what you want to do with the language. So for me, with Chinese, I have a goal in mind. Eventually, I'm going to run a Let's Play channel in Chinese and also use it with my family, okay? With Esperanto, I was just making friends, I was doing things with people and stuff like that. So each language, I have a different goal. Hell, I'm learning Spanish literally to test a language learning methodology. I have no other interest for the language beyond that.
I suppose it makes sense because then he makes the content. But I wish he left it at that and he didn't start a video by saying, look at me, 56 languages. What's 50 what?
Yeah, I totally agree with that statement. But that's how YouTubers get big. They just make up all this bullshit, have like clickbait titles and thumbnails and stuff, and then they blow up. And unfortunately for people like me, I'll never be in that position because, well, I can't be bothered doing that. And if you see a clickbait title or something, it's because I'm about to fuck with you.
Man, then it's and then you learn them in 24 hours. It's not whatever you manage. It doesn't matter how effective your method is, Xiaoma. Okay, and again, not hating here, but it doesn't matter what method you use. Whatever you manage to pick up in 24 hours of study is nothing. It's good for making a video, but it's nothing in terms of. But do you actually speak that language? How much do you know? How much can you really learn?
Ooh, he's cutting deep.
In 24 hours, it's pretty much nothing. You can learn a tiny little bit, so you can make a video. But
it's not nothing. I guarantee you, those videos that he's dropping with the millions of views on it, he's making probably like thousands of dollars on those videos. It would be more than thousands of dollars. He's probably making 10K per video. 10K per video, he spends a day, you know, doing some tutoring and stuff. Hey, it's not nothing.
From a real student perspective, someone is interested. Hey, I chose...
Yeah, but like if you want to learn a language, it's terrible advice.
Mandarin, Korean, German, Italian, French. I want to learn this language.
But here's the thing. I don't see Xiaoma as a language teacher. I never have. See, in my mind, he's just an entertainer. And like, I know all YouTubers are entertainers. That's why we're on the platform in a way, because we like to entertain as well. But he's not like... I didn't see him as being someone in the language space trying to teach methodologies and stuff like that. Now, the fact that he mentioned that he's got like some book or something, I kind of missed that. Maybe that means he's encroaching in on the language space, and then I'll probably start getting a lot more like picky with him. But prior to this point, I just saw him as like, you know, the silly white guy who walks into the shop, makes everyone laugh type of thing, and that was his big shtick, and you know, that's cool. Like, he was an entertainer.
Can I learn it in 24 hours? No. You can optimize your time and use a better way, better techniques, absolutely, 100%. I agreed with a lot of the stuff that he said. I just wish he ditched this, I'm so good, I'm so great, and look at me, 26 languages, I'm one of the greatest polyglots. I mean, I know he didn't say that with the polyglots, but you know what he said, rewatch it. That's the part that makes me cringe. But apart from that, I really liked this video when he went to Sicily, so that was cool. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you very much for watching.
Okay, I've got one comment I want to make about Metatron. I feel like he's probably watched a bit too many of these videos because it's starting to cut. Like, it's starting to annoy him. I can see it in his face and his reactions. To me, these are all just kind of funny and, like, I like to break them down, but I don't, like, take it too personally. I might be reading the whole situation wrong right now, but I feel like this is, like, this cut more deeply than it should have type of thing. Overall, yeah, I don't feel like his advice from Xiaoma is, like, that useful overall. Like, the majority of it is just, like, standard stuff, and then some of it's only good if you want to do exactly what he does type of thing. So yeah, not really much to learn from this except to see, you know, who's annoying who in the language community. And it's funny, I don't watch gossip channels, but I love watching like these language learning videos where people just like have little digs at each other type of thing. And obviously I'm part of that ecosystem. That's pretty much it. I'll see you all in the next video, and if you're not there, then you will become my Xiaoma.